Welcome back, everybody. I'm very excited for today. Not only do we have a lot of normal, very interesting stories to get into, we also get to start our reviewing process of my appearance on Jubilee. So that's what we'll start with, and kind of what we'll sprinkle out through the week because it's an hour and a half debate. So I won't play it all for you even through the whole week, but I'm definitely going to go through a bunch of clips in just one show, and I want to get to other stories as well. But as you might know, Jubilee is a really popular platform channel, and they host debate. Some of them are of a political nature. This one was titled One Gen Z Liberal, me, versus 20 MAGA Boomers on their show called Surrounded. So the way that it goes is one person sits in the center at a table, and then 20 people of the opposite ideology, and in this case of a very different age range too, sit around them, and one person at a time gets to jump forward and debate the claims that the person in my seat brought. The first one is Trump is an authoritarian threat to democracy. That we'll review, and it got really, really heated with this particular person, as I'll show to you. But it was a fascinating experience. I'll get into more later in the week, some of the behind the scenes and some of my more general thoughts, but I do want to dive right in. Before getting to the individual who you saw there, who will be kind of the title of this segment, just to warm you all up with some quicker, lighthearted social clips that came of this experience, you first have this.
Biden was so patriotic, he shut down the country.
Who was president in 2020?
I believe Donald Trump was.
Yeah.
Okay, so Doug, just warming you up, sort of get a feel of what we're going to talk about throughout the week. Then you have this.
I think a stuffed animal would be a better president than Trump.
Trump was actually a guy
compare those.
Who went one by one in his party. When he first launched his campaign in 2015,
This literally has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
It is exactly what
It's
it
not.
is. Yes, it is. It all comes down to whether she had the merit to even be a vice president.
Oh my God.
Okay, podcast listeners, what we were saying wasn't very relevant. It was the hand motion he was doing that I imitated. Now that Trump started doing this dance, it's like all of his supporters also just do this too much. And I don't even know if he could tell what he's doing because he kept doing it afterwards. Now, one bit of feedback I already saw in some of the comments that I know some of you will feel is the topics we were discussing were of a very serious nature, and our differences matter, and the damage Trump's doing to the country, which was much of what we were debating, matters. So when a lot of my energy throughout it at points was more lighthearted, or I was laughing a lot or making jokes or doing that, some people will say it doesn't treat the subject matter with the seriousness. That would be people who aren't familiar with this show, and a lot of you have already come and subscribed after watching this. Happy to have you here. Please do, if you appreciate the show as we go through it, click the subscribe button. Good time to remind you. Free, but it supports the work that we do, and thank you to all the new folks headed over here that we've seen over the last 24 hours. If you have watched this show for a while, you know exactly that that's the way I roll, and I'm not going to change it. The only way I can process all of this and sit through what was like 2 hours and got edited down a little bit of debate, in some cases with people that I perceive to be saying, as nice as they may have been interpersonally, delusional things, is to be silly here and there. And it was funny, I'm trying to remember the particular wording, but there was like a halftime break when we were recording, and I went off into the green room, and one of the producers was like, okay, so you could take down the silly, or the quips, that's what the word was. You could take down, Jaden was there, the quips a little bit. It's a little much. And I said, sorry, I can't. And the other producer was like, no, it's fine. And so that's just going to be a thread throughout this, not so much in the portion we're about to look at in a second with the woman you saw at the beginning. That was more serious, but throughout a lot of it, different things like you saw there would come up.
You agree Trump's lying when he says foreign countries pay the tariff?
I don't say he's lying.
But he's wrong.
But I'm saying it's not the complete truth.
It's not true at all.
What I like about it is he's stirring up the pot. And what I like about that is he's got the world talking.
Stirring? Yeah. I don't want to stir if I have to pay more.
I do.
Stop stirring.
I do.
What a weird thing. Wait, but if the stirring is bad, then it in and of itself is not a good act, no? No, as long as he's mixing things up, I'm good. Confusing. Now, if any of the people I debated, because they said they were going to look at the channel afterwards, come across this, I think you're cray. But with love, I think you're cray. But I am going to be pretty hard on you. That's how I feel. Doesn't mean we can't love each other as fellow human beings, but it was rough. And then one more teaser clip, then we'll dive into the first segment where we actually watch an extended portion. But if you want to watch the full thing yourself, obviously it is on Jubilee's channel. We'll link that below. But if you just search Jubilee, you'll see it.
What Trump is doing now is trying to get us back to the America that we were proud of.
Yeah, so I don't see
Not this ideology that has
Okay.
nowhere.
So you were talking about the psyops. You know what's a psyop?
Yeah.
Is getting you this fixated on what is impacting an incy tiny population. And
What do you mean?
Try to name what Biden
What do you mean
did.
by incy?
You were talking about the trans issue and
That's
pronouns.
one issue.
Biden, what did Biden do on that subject?
I don't know. What did he do?
Nothing.
He did nothing.
Have you ever heard Biden ever be like, listen, folks, castrate your children? No.
Just for our loyal viewers, I had to slip in a Biden impression. I slipped in a Biden impression, I slipped in a Trump impression, and I slipped in sussy. I did it all for you. I was sitting there thinking, I need to do some references. I couldn't find a chance to do my Bobby, but I got those other two for y'all.
No,
Never
but
happened.
Kamala did.
And Kamala didn't either. She
yes,
never
she
did.
did.
But I would like to point out to you, you're right now supporting a guy who has literally just signed into the law the greatest, which I don't see this as patriotic either, redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the top. It's like reverse Robin Hood. And while it is, look it up afterwards. While he's doing that, you can see, just since people are remembering, you can look at the independent analyses that show you how much wealth is gained by the top and how much is lost by the bottom. And while he's taking away our wealth, our well-being, making us pay more in tariffs, he promised to lower grocery prices on day one, such an old-fashioned word, groceries, he would say, and he didn't. They're going up, energy's going up. All these things are happening, but guess what he gets you to focus on?
And how long has he been in office?
3.5.
How long has he been in office?
3.5 trans people in East Maine.
How long has he been in office?
That's the psyop.
One note I heard myself say, people are murmuring. I noticed in the edit, which makes sense because the mics are right there, you can't hear all the people sitting around. It was really distracting because I would be debating someone and I would hear the person directly behind me be like, oh my gosh, he does not know what he's talking about. And I'd be like, I want to turn around and turn. So there I addressed some of them. They were going, oh my gosh, what is he doing? What about this? What about vaccines? What about, and I'm like, this is really distracting. So you can't really hear that in the edit. And then obviously that's a point I make a lot. There is something stunning about Trump being able to convince a movement of people that they should be okay with him hurting them in a bunch of economic ways, with him signing to law such a disaster with his One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And still, they won't focus on that because they've been convinced they should focus on trans. And so it was fascinating because even with how much emphasis she was putting on that in our conversation, when I asked, okay, if that's what made Democrats so bad, what is it that Biden did on that? And she admitted, I don't know. So then how can you even say that's such a defining issue for you if you don't even know what major thing he did on that was so bad and that was promoting castration or whatever the argument was? All right, now we actually dive into a little bit more meaty portions. Again, this claim ended up being the second claim in the edit. Trump is an authoritarian threat to democracy. Something, if you're a loyal viewer of the show, you know very well where I stand on that. But obviously the person who sat down with me disagreed very passionately.
My next claim is Trump is an authoritarian threat to democracy. Hello.
Hello,
Luke.
Lori Mills.
Nice to meet you, Laura.
Well, why don't you say your
What'd she say so I can reference her name? What
I think Lori Mills.
Lori, yeah, that's what it was, Lori.
prompt again, and I really want you to think about your prompt.
Trump is an authoritarian threat to democracy. He doesn't respect elections. He doesn't respect the nonviolent principles of approaching our democratic process. Doesn't respect court rulings. Is degrading our democratic process in a lot of key ways.
Okay, so I want you to really think about what you're saying here. Mm-hmm. He's had 2 assassination attempts because of rhetoric that you're giving right now.
I disagree.
Charlie Kirk is dead because of rhetoric that you are stating right now. Don't you think it's time to take down the rhetoric?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I actually make an effort to lower the rhetoric, but me identifying someone's ideology and saying through peaceful means we should push back against someone's authoritarianism is exactly in line with peaceful principles. What happened to Charlie Kirk is an abandonment of all of the principles I hold dear. That was horrific. And so the way that we push back against authoritarianism, like for example, if we're saying political violence is wrong, and that's what I believe, and that's why I am horrified by what happened to Charlie Kirk, then is it not anti-democratic, not in the interest of a peaceful approach to a democratic process for Trump to pardon January 6ers?
Well, no, because a lot of
They were violent.
Not all.
No, specifically think about people
Not
who assaulted.
all. I have a friend.
No, I don't want to hear about your friend. I'm talking about specifically violent offenders.
Well, I'm talking.
Daniel Rodriguez stun-gunned an officer. He had a heart
you guys
attack. I'm asking, is it correct that there were people who assaulted police officers violently who got pardons, and are you okay with that?
Yes, because their due process was violated when people.
It wasn't. They had
in
their trial.
No, they
They
didn't.
had their whole due process,
People were-
unlike the people that Trump is without
again,
his due
are you
process.
going to let me speak?
I just
or
don't
are you
appreciate
just
if you're
going to
avoid.
Let
I don't
me
feel
answer you.
Well, I actually believe that we should not be violent. It sounds like you're okay with some people who were violent.
No, I'm not.
Which scares me. I think that's not lowering the temperature.
I believe in the Constitution of the United States, which says that you
We should
have
have
the right
peaceful
to.
transfer of power,
I
which
believe
Trump
that
tried
you
to
have a
overturn.
right to a quick and speedy trial. I believe when you weren't a nonviolent
People-
offender,
we're
you
not talking about them yet. We can get to that
yes,
if you'd
we are.
like
We're
to.
talking
You're
about
trying
it
to
as
avoid
a
the
whole.
question I brought up.
No, you're just
which is
trying
we
to
brought up
talk
violence.
over me to
No,
be right.
No, you brought up
because
violence.
You want
You brought up
clickbait.
violence specifically.
No. Okay,
And
so
I'm saying,
Ashley Babbitt, let me.
All right, we'll pick up there. Click void. Turns into a little bit of a shouting match. That was another thing that kind of I was wondering about, because it's a real bummer when it does just become two people screaming over each other or speaking over each other, because you can't really hear what either person's saying. But also, this is a time, like there's a time constraint. And so something I remember after saying to Jaden was like, was there too much interrupting? Not enough interrupting? And the only reason is not because I don't want to hear what they have to say, but I've done enough of these. You know, this is where it all started, going to rallies and debating people, and then lots of debates since then. And you learn that you can literally get nowhere. You can sit down for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and never get anywhere productive or make clear where their argument is flawed, because every time you say something, the response is, well, the sky's blue. And you're like, oh, what? Well, my friend went the other day to a market and they saw that there was a poster, and I feel like the poster made a really cool thing. And then they also, and do you know, Arizona iced tea is like a really good price. They don't raise their price because it's kind of the thing about their business. And I drink what? And it'll go on. It's not like, and then they'll loop back to the point. It's not the weave, as Trump would say. They never loop back to the point.
I do the weave.
It just never gets back. And then they feel good. I debated well. They don't contend at all with what the original point was. And I'm the one who brought the claim. So I'm saying, all right, we got to stick to this. And so you saw it there where it was like, let's specifically start, then we can move on to whatever you want. But let's start with, when we talk about political violence, take issue with whoever you'd like. And I have, with random people online saying inappropriate things after an act of political violence. But you can't cite an example, can you, of an elected Democrat in a position of power taking an official act that endorses political violence. Whereas we just it's not about January 6th obsession. It's one of these rare examples where one of the leaders of a movement in a position of power took an official act to say you shouldn't be held fully accountable for these violent acts on behalf of a political cause, being January 6th. And so if you sit down across from me and say, I'm provoking political violence by just peacefully articulating what I think is an authoritarian ideology that Trump holds, but you're okay with him pardoning people who did political violence, isn't that more of an exacerbating act of political violence, endorsing it, supporting it, getting people out of jail for it, than my words about Trump's actions? And you can tell by bringing that up, instead of just going, hey, I like Trump on a lot of things, but you're right, that was completely inappropriate. It seems to endorse political violence as long as it's for him. It has to be, well, no, what about? Which is why I was like, all right, well, then I'm going to have to just keep pulling you back to the topic if you'll never come back to it.
Right.
No, you brought up
Because
violence. You brought up violence specifically.
No. Okay,
And
so
I'm saying,
Ashley Babbitt, let me ask you, Ashley Babbitt is dead. Do you think a 5'1", 100-pound girl?
I would love to get to Ashley Babbitt next and discuss that case. But you
You're
haven't
not letting me
addressed,
answer your question.
Well, because
so
you're
we're
not even trying to
there.
answer my question.
Yes, I am. Because every time I start, people were thrown in jail for 4 years without a trial. Brady material was withheld in their trials.
It sounds like
so
you aren't willing to acknowledge. It would be an hours-long conversation.
People were
it would be an hours-long conversation
mistreated.
if we want to get to each individual case.
And for
I'm
you
saying
to say, let's get
Trump
back to the
specifically
prompt.
Pardoned. Yeah, the prompt is Trump is an authoritarian threat to democracy.
Okay, so Joe Biden pardoned murderers.
That's Joe Biden.
You were okay with that?
He did. He removed,
You're okay with that?
he removed people off death row, which is different.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please.
Yeah, that's crazy. him being principally opposed to the death penalty, so people still have to be in prison forever, but there's not going to be killed because of the reasons I've explained. It's very rational to be against the death penalty. They'll bring that up in response to my question about Trump actually letting people out of prison. But then what's so fascinating is, so then if you're saying it's bad that Biden, what's the whataboutism? First of all, it's wrong. And what is the connection? So that's what I did. They have a Surrounded podcast where you reflect on the experience. And that theme will come up throughout the week as we review some of these conversations, which is, I can recognize there have been times where someone confronts me with something and I go, ooh, I actually need to think a little bit more before I can formulate a good argument. So, bringing it over here, right? But when I watch it back, I'm like, oh gosh, it's so clear. I don't want to answer that question. But the whole time, and there'll be times when that has happened where I go, I don't actually know much. Actually, that came up in this debate a couple times. I don't actually know much about what you just brought up, but I do know about blank. But there was none of that. It was just the tone and the response denoted a belief that they were addressing my points, when in reality, they were going some whole different direction. Like, what about Ashley Babbitt? Wait, okay, well, if we could talk about Ashley Babbitt next, I have all sorts of feelings about that and how it's Trump's fault that happened. But why wouldn't you just address what I just said? Which is, by the way, makes sense structurally. We would follow my lead because I'm the one who brings the claims. You're supposed to debate the claim I brought, not some other random one. All right, so, take that down. Before we get to the second one with Lori, after that wrapped up, obviously it was one of the more contentious ones. The next guy sat down and said that I'm stifling free speech for interrupting Lori. What?
So if you're saying that Trump is a threat to democracy,
yeah.
Do me a favor and define that better for me.
Yeah, I think if you don't respect key democratic principles, so we don't get caught up, I'd love to, but on January 6th, the entire time, we could shift to him threatening media companies, which is not in the interest of, I think if you're doing things against the First Amendment, that wouldn't be very in the interest of our democratic process. And so lately, I'm sure you've kept up with his FCC investigating and threatening media outlets that say stuff that Trump doesn't like. Trump recently said that protesters, literally who screamed at him at a restaurant, should have RICO cases brought against him. I'm sure people are rolling their eyes because they don't believe that's true. You can find the clip. That's completely disconnected from what we should hold dear as Americans, no?
Here's what I think about it. I think that the fundamental, the bedrock of our democracy is civil discourse.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Totally.
Okay, so when you speak over the last speaker, you're getting rid of civil discourse. You're turning a dialogue into a monologue.
No, I think it's just heated civil discourse.
It's heated civil discourse that you can explain away, but doesn't get anything done. I'm here to understand you and be understood by you. And when only you speak, we're not getting anything done.
I'll just warn everyone, if anyone doesn't even try to acknowledge or respond to the points that I'm bringing up, to the claim I'm bringing up, then I'm going to have to stop you because we have limited time and I don't want you to just say a bunch of random stuff.
I get it.
Just like there, you brought up me interrupting when I'm talking about the president's doing. Me interrupting the last individual is a lot less consequential than Trump threatening media outlets who say things he doesn't like.
It's fundamental to...
Okay. Feels weird. Feels strange. And then we went 5 minutes into the debate or something. Maybe not 5 minutes. It felt like a while. And then it comes back up that I'm the real threat to democracy because I'm interrupting people. Come on.
And after all that, the system worked. The system prevented somebody from being that bad.
But how does that not make him bad for trying, just like an attempted crime?
I think he did what anybody would want to do, and that is cling to power. Yes. It's just like
Why did no other president deny the peaceful transfer of power like him? He was the first one.
Why did Al Gore take the hanging Chad situation all the way to the Supreme Court?
Did Trump ever concede the 2020 election? Did Trump ever concede like Al Gore did?
Al Gore...
That's an important question.
I don't think so.
You're bringing up, no, he didn't. And that's bad, right?
Al Gore...
Well, actually, I think we got into a really important place here.
And now you're talking over me.
Well, because you're bringing up Al Gore. Al Gore did the thing that Trump never did. And that's my problem.
And
you don't respect democracy if you don't concede elections.
Your reason trumps civil discourse. No pun intended.
Wait, repeat that, what?
Your reason for talking over me trumps civil discourse. Now I do intend the pun.
I think nice. I think Trump attacking media outlets, staying in power or trying to stay in power illegally after losing an election fair and square is much more dangerous than me speaking over you.
Do you really do?
You've been voted out.
Okay. It was funny because I totally understand getting irritated with being interrupted. But as I explained it, I said, everyone be warned. If I ask you a question or I make my claim and your reaction is to go 100 yards in the opposite direction of what I brought up, maybe if we were just sitting having coffee and there wasn't a time constraint, and by the way, that this was all recorded, and I'd feel like I'm not being responsible letting you go 100 yards in the other direction to a bunch of falsehoods. Yeah, I'm gonna cut you off. It may be different if we're just sitting having coffee, but it's very important that I keep you on the tracks. And so the funny thing was, I knew people would get irritated by that as it started picking up, but I did not know I was going to be accused of being the real threat to democracy, to civil discourse for interrupting. And you'll notice when people were actually engaging thoughtfully with what I was saying, I don't interject. I let them say their piece and then I go. And some of them did try to actually thoughtfully engage with what I was saying. One person said a bunch of stuff that I didn't actually understand. I just didn't talk the whole time. But if it's clear what you're doing, I have to cut you off. This other one with Lori again was on the topic of Trump supporters are not patriotic. And I would like to word it better. My point is supporting Trump is not patriotic, because you'll have people who've done really patriotic things in their life, serving the country, and they've fallen for Trump's propaganda. And so that is a distinction. But the ideology itself, is my point, is not a patriotic ideology. And it places Trump over the tenets of patriotism and love for the country and democracy. And then I think we just kind of descended into Epstein. So that's where this picks up.
Yeah, you guys don't know anything about the case.
I have no interest in connecting it to anybody. I'm saying
only Trump.
That no, Trump's the president, and Trump is currently being asked by even people like Marjorie Taylor Greene to be transparent, release everything. Let's both say nothing's bad about that.
No, I've been trying to get them released for 7 years.
Well, credit to you. So then,
yes.
Do you agree that to me it's not American patriotism for him to push back against that for so long?
Well, I think the thing is he knew that the Democrats were going to try to turn this and make it about him.
Wait, release it, then they can't, right?
You said you'd let me talk, so let's do this. The defense attorney of Virginia, Giuffre, who basically said that Donald Trump was the only one that helped with the case.
Okay.
Suddenly, you guys want to use it as a talking point.
You don't know anything else. You made your point. Now let me make mine.
Okay.
Let's assume everything you're saying is absolutely correct.
It is.
Great. Why won't he release them? Then it silences Democrats.
An Obama judge has blocked a lot of the files.
Do you know about the case?
Yeah,
That's
I do.
the grand jury documents. Nothing is new in the grand jury documents.
Can you agree that there is definitely people that were very powerful in institutions that did not want to be exposed, that did very evil thing with children? Now, the thing is a lot of the...
So you see, again, on this, it sounds like she's agreeing with me. And I'm going, let's both, for this conversation, not speculate or not argue over what is in the documents about Trump. Let's just agree first, we both think they should be released. And she says, well, I've been trying for 7 years. Okay, well then why are you not just saying, yep, they should, and it's bad that Trump's not? Why is it, well, the Democrats are using it for blah, 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 blah. If you were to agree, true, it's bad that he's not and he should, then maybe we could move to, what do we think about the political arguments that are being made in relation to it? What do we think about it not being released before Trump's term? What do we think about what could be in there about Trump? All of that's fair game. But first, the claim itself that we're now grappling over is, how do we feel about Trump's actions in pressuring Republicans not to release the documents? So why are we talking about, and there were a lot of random parts, why are we talking about this random stuff and blah, blah, blah? Just agree with that part of it first.
This evidence, and I hate to say it, is destroyed. I hate to say it. There were cameras and film and videos in every single one of these rooms.
We're on the same page.
Can we agree?
It's a little weird.
No, it's not.
A little sussy.
No, it's not.
He's calling up. He's calling up. The White House is calling up Republicans and saying this is a hostile act if you sign on to the discharge petition.
No, it's not. He said release everything.
out loud, but then he's calling people saying it's Marjorie Greene.
Do you
think Marjorie Greene is lying about Trump?
I haven't seen him say that.
Okay.
I've not seen discharge papers, so I can't speak to that.
Well, that's what's being debated
But
right
what
now.
I can say that I will agree with you on, I don't like that he's calling it a hoax.
Cool.
I will agree with you on that. Now, with
Okay,
President...
pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
I think I did better.
We did do better, but
Yeah,
look,
we did better.
let's talk. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was the second time she sat down, and she was like, "You gotta let me." And actually, during the halftime break, okay, think about this. So we did like maybe an hour of debating, and then break for people to go to the restroom and get a snack or whatever. And I stand up, and a few of them, especially the guy that you saw earlier, were like, "Hey, you need to let people talk." I was like, "Hey, whoa. We're during halftime. We don't talk work during halftime. Okay? You need to I need to get some goldfish. Calm down." No. So, I mean, I tried. This was during the second half portion, if I'm not mistaken. I tried to let her talk a little bit more. Did my best. So that's what that was about. I was like, "Hey, see, I tried." Because even during the non-recording parts, I was getting pressured to. Now there's so much more. I hate that we can't just cover it all today, but then the whole show would be that, and so you want to be informed on other things as well, I'm sure. But one of the things was, you saw those fact checks. The two that popped up there were just reaffirming what I was saying, and when some of them will pop up, I don't really understand how they choose when to put them up. I would think it's if someone said something wrong, you then put up a fact check. That's normally how they're used. But that, like the two you saw there, were about the grand jury documents, what I said about how nothing new was in them, so it's kind of a red herring to divert and say, well, the Trump administration tried to get them released, but the Obama judge... That's because that was not at all to the caliber of what the federal government, the Trump administration, already has their hands on. So they don't need to go to the grand jury for stuff that we already know. They should actually release stuff that we don't have access to yet, and that would be new information. So it reaffirmed that. And the second one was about the Trump calls, and it reaffirmed that. So when they would pop up, I'm like, wait, what? Are they saying I said something wrong? And then it would be what I said. And then some of them were strange, and I'll address those later. Parts that I was like, oh, that was kind of a weird way to word that, where it's, I think, a little bit misleading, but all good. We'll address that in a different segment. And then I have some BTS footage, and then so many other parts. That was a more serious one, but there were a lot of just wacky parts where the whole time I'm kind of giggling my way through because it was so absurd. And that's what friends have been texting after they watched it. Some of them saying they just couldn't even keep watching it. Got them so upset. But asking about how my experience was. And I sympathize with the irritation, if you go watch the full thing, with parts where people just aren't listening, or they're just saying random stuff, or being kind of delusional. And I felt that, but I would say the muscle memory has been worked up through enough of these where it's going to be a healthier experience for me if I just have fun and I was very, nice to everybody. And that's a healthier way, I think, for me to process. So that mismatch will be clear for you as we continue through some of these, where it's actually irritating what's happening, but I seem not to be irritated. In retrospect, I'm irritated by some parts, but had actually a lot of fun recording it. And I'll have some little criticisms like I referenced before, but there have been a lot of people speaking out against Jubilee recently for platforming certain ideas or for their experience on it. I just want to say on the record, I really enjoyed working with Jubilee, and I thought that they put on a really good production, very high value. And however productive you think those types of conversations are, those are the conversations that are happening in the world. So putting them on a YouTube channel, I think, is perfectly fine, even if it's just for the sake of yelling at each other, whatever. I think it's actually good to have your views challenged, even if no one changes their view.